Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. It has been far, far too long since I dug into the box of unknown North American heavy metal singles and showed off a few of those, played some sound clips for you, let you check out some of the long lost bands that never quite, made it to the top. Let's be honest, they didn't even make it to the middle, but they did leave behind maybe one or two vinyl artifacts that are kind of cool and deserve their 15 minutes or so in the spotlight. So let's not waste any time here. We're going to start off with a very early one. This is by a band called Squadran. Now, notice it's Squadran, R-A-N at the end. There's a whole bunch of bands that have used the name Squadron, R-O-N. I think this is the only one I'm aware of that spells it R-A-N. This came out in 1980, so very early for US metal. I've seen it ascribed to 1979 in a few places, but I think 1980 is the correct date. It's kind of nice to know that even at the very dawn of American heavy metal in the 1980s, bands were already misspelling their name. That just does my heart some good. So anyway, Squadron. This is a band out of New York, and let's check out what they sound like. I've talked about very early American heavy metal in older videos on this channel. By the time we get back to 1980, the pickings are a bit slim. So let's see what Squadron has to offer. We're going to check out a clip of one of the two songs here. This is the one called The Wall. I'm going to probably just start it right at the beginning. Might hop forward a little bit if the intro is too long. Here's The Wall. All right, so there is New York's Squadron with The Wall, 1980, very early year for American heavy metal. But this song is kind of pushing all the right buttons. It's got that cool rumbly driving riff. Reminds me a little bit maybe of something like Black Ice by Aragorn out of the new wave of British heavy metal scene. And then you got that crazy over the top scream that kind of helps launch the song into its first voice. Yeah, how much more metal can you get in 1980 than that? It's a weird song in some ways. It's got that very abrupt time change in the middle. You're going through this real headbanging verse, and all of a sudden it's just like, whoa! You throw on the brakes and they do something different, and then come back and kind of step on the gas again. So yeah, goofy song in some ways, but a really nice example of bands starting to adopt a very modern, very 80s heavy metal vibe right there at the beginning of the decade. Squadron, not a whole lot known about the band. There's an interesting little sort of trivia footnote on Metal Archives that says the band actually auditioned to be Ozzy Osbourne's backing band, when he was going solo there at the start of the 80s, but that the band were told flat out, it's like, Ozzy wants to work with a band that people may have actually heard of before. So, ouch. It didn't work out for Squadron exactly. But yeah, they did have this one cool single, if nothing else. Now, the flip side of this one is called, was it Fly Away? The Fly Away song is not exactly the same kind of burner that The Wall is. Fly Away's got a little bit more of a laid back, pacier approach to it. Not a terrible song, but if that was the only song you heard by Squadron, you might not even want to put them, under the heavy metal banner of 1980 and be like, they're working on it. But I think The Wall kind of cements their place among the legends of the first bands on American soil to really start moving away from that 70s sound of what we now think of as hard rock and classic rock, the early 70s proto metal stuff, and yeah, just adopting the heavy metal ethos as we came to know and love it during the 1980s. All right, from 1980, let's jump, excuse me, to 1982 and a band called Two Timer. Kind of a cool picture sleeve design on this one. I can dig it with the snakes and the different representations of two. This band was from Pennsylvania, made this one single, and we're going to check out a clip of one of the songs called Words on the Telephone. Strange title, but let's see what it sounds like. Words on the Telephone by Two Timer. So there's Words on the Telephone by Two Timer. Never have found much information on this band. They were out of Pennsylvania, seem to have only done this one song. I've never really even seen like a list of band members or anything. So if anybody out there has more information about the band, love to know a little bit more about them. To my knowledge, this is the only thing they recorded with the Two Timer single. You can hear you get that kind of very early, very raw kind of guitar sound, which is very cool. As far as the whole song structure goes, this is one of those things where you could put it into very early heavy metal. You might though still be tempted to put it over towards like the AC/DC hard rocking side of things. The flip side, which is entitled, making sure I get this song right, Shake It Right, is not bad. It has a little bit more of that sort of AC/DC or possibly even like a George Thorogood and the Destroyers kind of vibe to it a little bit, especially in the way the vocalist is phrasing things and such. Again, not a bad song, but it kind of, again, it straddles that line between heavy metal and hard rock, which a lot of bands were doing in the earliest 80s. Again, this is 1982. Metal Blade Records and stuff, really just ideas that are coming together on the West Coast, and these guys are trying things out over on the East Coast. But yeah, other than the info here on the back of the picture sleeve, that's really about all I've ever seen published about the band Two Timer. This is a single that I see it sometimes listed for a lot of money, but you can also find copies pretty cheap. In fact, I checked earlier today before making this video, and there's a copy on Discogs for like $10 with the picture sleeve. It's not mint, but for $10, geez, you can barely buy a Happy Meal at McDonald's for $10 anymore. You get a pretty cool little single. I do dig this one. One thing I should have mentioned on Squadron, backing up for a second, sorry about that, it's getting a little late. In terms of price or rarity on this one, I've seen the price for this one kind of all over the place. I've seen copies sell for like $30-40. I've seen copies sell for a couple of $100, and I've seen things in between. So really hard to nail down a price on this one. Worth pointing out, the band apparently did have an anthology put out in 2017 that has the single plus a few other songs. Looks like a couple of them are live tracks and maybe the others are demos. Don't know. I did not know it existed until I was doing a little research on this particular video. So Squadron does have a few other songs out there if you want to pick up that anthology collection. It looks like it was on a smaller label. I don't see many copies of it online, even though it's not that old. But yeah, two-timer, no other tracks that I'm aware of. All right, third and last entry for the night. Went over to California for a band called Vengeance. Vengeance is a band name that's been used by a lot of different groups, but yeah, this particular group out of California in the early 80s and made a single on Mystic Records, which was sort of a small record label. This is not a truly independent DIY release. There are other things put out through the Mystic label. So, they were technically signed, even if it was kind of, a small local label. Don't know much about Mystic's history. But yeah, with Vengeance, we're going to check out a clip here before we discuss them a little bit more. For this one, we're going to check out a bit of the song Driving Force. And this one I will jump forward probably a little bit towards the middle of the song. So here we go, Driving Force.
I've been trying all night. Can't wait to hit the road, tired of being old. Fast is driving, forcing me. Can't wait to get out into the street. And I'm not alone, I got this band with me. We're gonna do it right, shine like a firelight. Got a rat tight, we're feeling right. Just gotta let out this energy. Better believe it, cause I'm leaving. I'm leaving, I got intent to ride. I'm intent to ride, got nothing in my way. I'm leaving today, nothing in my way. Leaving today, nothing in my way. Oh, nothing more to say.
All right, there is some of Vengeance's Driving Force. Cool song, high energy. Production obviously leaves a bit to be desired, but still a lot of charm coming through there. A lot of energy, nice guitar, driving drums. Yeah, vocals not bad either. So yeah, kind of a cool song. The flip side, Way Past Go, is not bad. It's a little more restrained, sticks a little bit more to, kind of a, mid-paced, little catchier number, not quite as, shall we say, driving as Driving Force there. Sometimes just, little things about a particular single can kind of make you happy. I think it's kind of cool that, they use different color labels for the two sides. You get white on black, and then you get black on white on the flip. And the Vengeance single also came with an insert. If the pictures on the back of the picture sleeve weren't enough for you, you also got this little fold out image of the band. So another shot of Vengeance in all their glory. Yeah. All I can say is I really want someone to take the picture of this dude here in the center and turn it into like some kind of Old Spice meme. Let's face it, it'd be better than most of the Old Spice commercials that you have to sit through. And then the flip side gives you lyrics and actually some color printing too, not just black and white. So yeah, something, a little cool add-in that's kind of neat. Not something that you get, a lot of singles, from that era and stuff. Yeah, you're lucky if you get a picture sleeve, much less, an insert or anything. So the deal with Vengeance, they actually did stick around for a bit, but they ended up changing their name. as far as I know, this was the only thing they released under the name Vengeance. A few years after this, they changed their name to, wait for it, Lix Array. And if you'd missed that, it's okay, because it doesn't make much sense. It's Lix, Lixx, Array, Array. So they went from a Vengeance driving force to a project called Lix Array. I have not heard any of the Lix Array material. They did release a couple of albums, EP and stuff. So they stuck around on the scene for several years and did have some output. I have not heard any of it. I've looked it up on Discogs just to kind of get a glance at it. True, you should probably never judge, an album based on its cover. But based on the cover of the Lix Array material, I think it's pretty safe to say the band had rapidly migrated out of the heavy metal spectrum. And I don't know if they were doing rock, alt stuff, indie stuff. Not sure. I haven't checked them out. But I don't think there's more heavy metal to be heard there. If so, it's probably more like in maybe the glammy or hair metal end of the spectrum. So, hey, if somebody out there is familiar with the Lix Array stuff, by all means, please leave a comment down below and let us know what it's like. I could have clicked on it and checked it out on YouTube beforehand. I figured we can just leave that one as a mystery and maybe we'll explore it together another time. So yeah, the Vengeance single, kind of a cool one. It's not a particularly expensive item. This is very much the kind of single I think is going to be, around that, $40, $50 price point at most if you're looking for a copy. Might have to pay a little bit more to get a copy with the insert. A lot of copies I see don't have the insert with it. Mine actually didn't originally have the insert. And I luckily stumbled into somebody who had a copy of the insert. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I hadn't seen it before. And they were actually very generous and were like, you know what? Just take my copy. I don't really need it. You can have that copy. Like, really? You want money or something? It's like, no, just go ahead. So yeah, big thank you to the person who hooked me up with the insert to go with my Vengeance single. All right, so there we have it. 3 long-lost bands in heavy metal history. A chance to hear all of them. And now let's talk metal in the comments down below. What do you think of these groups? Squadron, pretty heavy by 1980 standards, I think. What other bands do you think were on that level in the United States circa 1980? I've never been able to come up with a very long list, but maybe you know about some that I don't. What do you think about Two Timer? Are they a little bit too rock and roll AC/DC-ish to be under the heavy metal tent? Or can you kind of dig that raw guitar tone they got going on? And Vengeance. Again, if anybody knows about the Lix Array project, be interested to hear a little bit more. And again, I want to say there's at least 1 or 2 other metal-ish things on the Mystic Records label too, but names escape me at the moment. If you remember what they were, please leave a comment for other folks to read. So if they're out hunting records in the wild, they'll know what kind of things to keep an eye out for. All right, let's call it to a close. So until next time, everybody, please take care. And as always, keep banging your head.